The marble floor of the Azure cost more than my entire kitchen equipment, and I knew this because I'd priced restaurant-grade marble 3 years ago when I dreamed of renovating my own place. I stood there in my best dress, the navy one with the modest neckline that my mother had once called acceptable, holding a white pastry box that was starting to sweat through the cardboard. The hostess had a Bluetooth earpiece and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She scanned her tablet again, her manicured nail tapping the screen with increasing impatience. "I'm sorry, ma'am, I'm not seeing an Elena Harper on the list." I shifted the box to my other arm. The heat from 60 miniature lemon tarts was bleeding through the cardboard, and I could feel the condensation forming against my palm. My sister made the reservation. Mackenzie Preston. She's the guest of honor. Ah. The hostess's face brightened with recognition. Mrs. Preston's party is in the private dining room. But I still don't see your name. Just tell her I'm here. I have the pastries. I can't let you in without a confirmed reservation, ma'am. It's a private event. I pulled out my phone, but before I could dial, I saw them through the glass partition. My mother, Carol Preston, in her cream-colored Chanel suit that she'd bought at the Houston boutique during my father's final months in the hospital. My sister, Mackenzie, radiant and round with her first pregnancy, wearing a floral dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment on the building. My mother saw me first. Her expression didn't change. She simply turned to my sister and said something I couldn't hear through the glass. Mackenzie looked up, and I watched her face cycle through recognition, calculation, and finally, a strange kind of relief. She walked toward me, one hand on her belly, moving slowly through the crowded lobby. When she reached me, she didn't hug me. She never hugged me anymore. "Elena, what are you doing here?" "You invited me." "The baby shower." "You asked me to bring the desserts." "Right. Right." She glanced back at the private room where our mother was now speaking with a waiter. "Look, I know this is awkward, but there's a problem with the seating. We're packed, and honestly, you're not really going to fit in with this crowd." I waited. I'd been waiting for 20 years. "Why don't you try that dirty pub across the street? I hear it's more your speed." She gestured toward the window, toward the faded green door that I'd refused to repaint even when the real estate agent told me it lowered property value. "The rusty nail, right? It suits you perfectly." My mother appeared beside my sister, her hand resting on Mackenzie's shoulder. "It does suit her perfectly," she said, nodding. "Don't you think so, Elena? That place seems like exactly where you belong." I smiled. I'd been practicing that smile for 20 years. It was the same smile I'd worn when my mother threw away my father's cast-iron skillet and I fished it out of the trash at midnight. It was the smile I'd worn when I left Austin at 17 with nothing but a duffel bag and a bus ticket. It was the smile I'd worn when my mother called me a waitress for the 100th time, never knowing I was a chef, never knowing I owned anything. "Of course," I said. "I'll do that." I walked out of the Azure with my pastry box held high, and as I crossed Barton Springs Road, I could feel their eyes on me through the glass. They thought they'd won. They thought they'd put me in my place. 3 weeks later, my mother would tell me she'd always known I was a quitter, that I was too sensitive, that I didn't understand how the world worked. She still doesn't know that I saved her. I was born in the back of my father's diner. That's not a metaphor. My mother went into labor at 2 in the morning while my father was prepping for the breakfast rush. He was the cook, the dishwasher, the busboy, and the manager, because he couldn't afford to hire anyone else. My mother was the waitress, and she'd been working double shifts until her water broke. I was born at St. David's Hospital, but my first home was the apartment above the diner, the same kind of apartment I live in now. My father, Frank Harper, carried me down the stairs when I was 2 days old and placed me in a bassinet behind the counter so my mother could work. He was a big man, 6'3" with hands that could crack walnuts and knead dough with the gentleness of a prayer. He made hand pies on Sundays because Sunday was my mother's day off, and he'd let me stand on a milk crate and help him crimp the edges. He taught me that the secret was in the lard, that you had to keep the butter cold, that the filling had to be perfect because people remembered the first bite. My mother hated the kitchen. She hated the grease, the heat, the way the smell clung to her clothes and hair. She hated the customers who snapped their fingers for refills. She hated the men who patted her ass and laughed like it was a joke. She hated being a waitress. One Saturday, when I was 5 years old, I watched a man in a suit snap his fingers at her across the room. "Sweetheart," he called, loud enough for the whole diner to hear, "I need more coffee. I'm dying over here." My mother's face went red. She walked over and filled his coffee without a word, but I saw her hands shaking. When she walked back to the kitchen, I followed her behind the swinging door. She was crying, her mascara running down her cheeks, and my father wrapped his arms around her. "I'm getting you out of here," he said. "One day, I'm going to have my own place, and you're never going to wait another table." He never did. He worked 7 days a week, 60-hour weeks, for 12 years. He put money aside for a down payment on a restaurant, but then the 1990s recession hit, and then his health started failing. He didn't tell us he was sick. He just kept working, kept coming home smelling like onions and coffee, kept making hand pies on Sundays. He died when I was 17. Pancreatic cancer. 6 weeks from diagnosis to death. A month later, my mother threw away everything that reminded her of him. She boxed up his clothes, his photos, his recipe books. She rented a dumpster for the kitchen things because she said she couldn't stand to look at them. I came home from school to find the dumpster full. The cast iron skillet was on top. It was black with 80 years of seasoning, and I could still see the faint outline of the pattern my father had made in the bottom. He'd left a fingerprint in the metal, and he used to laugh and say, "That's my signature, Ellie. Nobody else has a skillet with my thumbprint in it." I climbed into the dumpster and pulled it out. My mother saw me. I was standing in the backyard, wearing my Catholic school uniform, holding this 90-pound skillet against my chest. She walked to the back door and looked at me for a long time. "Put that back," she said. "No." "Elena," I said, "put it back." "No. Your father is gone. That's just a pan. It doesn't matter." I held it tighter. "It matters to me." She stepped closer, and for a moment I thought she might try to take it from me. But she stopped at the edge of the porch. "You're just like him," she said. "You'll never amount to anything. You'll spend your whole life in a kitchen, and you'll die there, and nobody will remember you." I was 17. I didn't have the words to fight back. I just walked past her and up the stairs to my room and hid the skillet under my bed. That night, I used my savings from my diner job to buy a Greyhound ticket to Chicago. I packed one bag. I didn't say goodbye to my mother. I didn't say goodbye to my younger sister, Mackenzie, who was 12 years old and didn't understand why I was leaving. I called Mackenzie from a payphone at the bus station. "I'll come back," I told her. "When I'm somebody. When I can show them." She was crying. "Mom says you're running away. Mom doesn't know anything." I hung up and got on the bus. I started as a dishwasher at a diner on the south side of Chicago. The owner was a Greek man named Dimitri who yelled at everyone and threw plates when he was angry. I lasted a year. I learned to scrape, stack, and load the industrial dishwasher in under 60 seconds. After that, I moved to a pizza place, then a gastropub, then a fine dining restaurant in the Loop. Every kitchen was the same. The heat, the noise, the hierarchy. You started at the bottom and you worked your way up. You proved yourself every single shift. Nobody cared about your name or where you came from. They cared about whether your mise en place was ready, whether your sauce was at the right temperature, whether you could handle the rush. My mother called me once a year, maybe twice. Always on my birthday. Always the same conversation. "Are you still in Chicago?" "Yes." "Still in kitchens?" Yes. You know, Elena, you could do anything. You were a good student. You could have gone to college. You could have been a lawyer or a doctor or something. I don't want to be a lawyer. What do you want to be? I never knew how to answer that. I wanted to cook. I wanted to own a kitchen. I wanted to stand in the pass and call out orders and feel the rhythm of a dinner service moving around me. I wanted to feed people. But how do you explain that to a woman who sees food service as servitude? In my 10th year, I made sous chef at a Michelin-starred restaurant. It was the hardest year of my life. I worked 18-hour shifts. I went home with burns and knife cuts. I lost 20 pounds I didn't have to lose. But I learned. I learned how to build a menu, how to manage a brigade, how to handle a walk-in full of VIPs on a Saturday night. The chef, a Frenchman named Laurent, pulled me aside after service one night. He was drunk, as usual, and his accent was thick. You are good, Elena. But you are also sad. You have the sadness in your eyes. Why do you cook? I don't know. Liar. You cook because you are trying to make someone proud. But that is a terrible reason. You must cook because you love it. If you are cooking for someone else's approval, you will never be satisfied. I walked home that night through the snow, thinking about my father. I wondered if he'd cooked for approval or for love. I wondered if he'd been satisfied. I wondered if he'd known that I was proud of him, even if I'd never said it. The next day, I got a call from Gus Kowalski. Gus was an old family friend of my father's. He'd owned the Rusty Nail in Austin since before I was born, and he'd been wanting to retire for years. He'd heard I'd made chef. Your dad would have been proud, he said. I always knew you had it in you. Gus, I can't afford to come back to Austin. I'm not asking you to buy the place. I'm asking you to run it. I'll sell it to you for what I paid for it in 1975. $20,000. I know you don't have that, but we can do seller financing. $5,000 down. You can pay me the rest over time. $20,000 for a restaurant. It was insane. It was a gift. It was exactly what my father had wanted his whole life. I can't, I said. I don't have $5,000. I know you don't. But you have something better. You have your father's hands. 3 weeks later, I was back in Austin. The Rusty Nail had been a dive bar since 1924. It survived Prohibition by serving root beer out of a keg and whiskey in teacups. It survived the Depression because my father's grandfather ate the profit margins and slept on the floor of the kitchen. It survived a flood in 1956 and a fire in 1978 and the entire city's shift toward the sterile, glass-walled restaurants that now line Barton Springs Road. Gus had never changed the building. The floor was original oak, worn down by a century of boots. The bar was mahogany, cracked and stained. The kitchen was a tiny shoebox with a 6-burner stove that was probably a fire hazard. I loved it immediately. The first week, I worked 16-hour days. I scrubbed the kitchen with steel wool. I reorganized the pantry. I threw out expired ingredients and bought my own spices. I cooked a tasting menu for Gus and his wife, and he cried when he ate my braised short ribs. You did it, he said. You made your father's recipe better. No, I didn't. I just added more garlic. He laughed. You're a harper. You'll never admit you're good at something. On my 31st birthday, Gus officially transferred the business to me. I paid him $600 a month, and when that $600 was paid off, the building was mine. I was a chef owner. I didn't have a staff of 20 like I'd had in Chicago. I had a cook named Derek who was fresh out of culinary school and a dishwasher named Maria who had 5 kids and never missed a shift. I had a bartender named Donnie who looked like he'd been alive since Prohibition and a waitress named Pat who'd been at the Rusty Nail since 1982. We worked our asses off. We opened for lunch and dinner, 6 days a week. I cooked everything. I made the bread and the pastries and the sauces. I cleaned the grease trap. I did payroll. I was the chef, the owner, the dishwasher, and the therapist. One night, a food critic from the Austin Chronicle wandered in. He'd been trying to get into a new restaurant down the street, but it was full. He sat at the bar and ordered the short ribs. He came back 3 more times, always ordering something different. On his 4th visit, he wrote a review. The Rusty Nail is the kind of restaurant that makes you believe in God. The food is transformative. The atmosphere is authentic. The chef, Elena Harper, is a culinary force. She deserves a star. I framed that review and hung it in the kitchen. A year later, Michelin sent an inspector. I didn't know it was a Michelin inspector. He didn't tell me. He just came in, ordered the tasting menu, and sat there for 2.5 hours, taking notes on a small pad. I was in the kitchen, sweating over the stove, completely oblivious. 3 weeks later, I got a letter. The Rusty Nail had earned a Michelin star. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my mother. I didn't tell my sister. I hung the certificate next to the dish pit, where only my staff could see it, and I went back to work. 3 weeks before Mackenzie's baby shower, she called me for the first time in 6 years. Elena, I want you to come. To Austin? To the shower. I'm having it at the Azure. It's the new restaurant on Barton Springs. Across from you, actually. Mom's paying. I was in the kitchen, rolling dough. I pressed the phone between my ear and my shoulder. I don't think Mom wants me there. It's my shower, Elena. I want you there. Please. I should have said no. I should have told her I was busy. I should have protected myself. But I was weak, and I was tired, and there was a part of me that still wanted to be a good sister. What do you want me to bring? Something. I don't know. You're a cook, right? Bring something you made. Right. I hung up and stared at the flour on my hands. My father's flour. His recipe. His kitchen. For 3 days, I thought about what to make. I considered elaborate desserts, but that felt like showing off. I considered something simple, but that felt like I was hiding. Finally, I decided on hand pies. My father's hand pies. The ones we'd made on Sunday mornings. I spent 3 days making them. I made the dough by hand. I made the filling with fresh berries and just a hint of cinnamon. I made exactly 120, enough for everyone at the shower. I arranged them in 24 pastry boxes, each box tied with a simple ribbon. I spent $350 on ingredients. I didn't have $350. The day of the shower, I put on my navy dress and I drove across town to the Azure. I parked in the back. I carried the boxes into the lobby. And then I stood there in the marble lobby, holding those boxes, while my sister told me I didn't fit. The Rusty Nail was quiet when I walked back inside. It was only 4 o'clock, and the dinner service wouldn't start for another hour. Derek was prepping in the kitchen. Pat was polishing glasses at the bar. Donnie was counting the till. "Morning, chef," Derek said when I walked through the kitchen door. I walked past him, into the tiny office that was barely bigger than a closet, and I closed the door behind me. I set the pastry boxes on my desk. I opened one and looked at the hand pies. I had spent 3 days on these. $350. $350 I didn't have. I had made them with love, with hope, with the desperate faith that maybe this time they would see me. They hadn't. I took off my dress and put on my chef's coat. It was stained and worn. It had my name embroidered on the chest. Elena Harper. I had earned that name. I had bled for that name. I walked back into the kitchen and started prepping for dinner. "Everything okay?" Derek asked. I looked at him. He was 23 years old, bright-eyed, earnest. He reminded me of myself, back when I'd started. "I'm fine," I said. "Let's make it a good service tonight." An hour later, my mother and sister showed up. I saw them through the front window. Pat was about to turn them away, but I waved her off. I walked to the door and opened it. "Elena, this is..." My mother stopped. She was looking at my chest. She was looking at my name embroidered on my coat. She was looking at the kitchen behind me, the steam rising from the stove, the prep station where Derek was slicing vegetables. "What is this?" she asked. "Reality," I said. Mackenzie was crying. Fat tears rolled down her cheeks. "We didn't know," she said. "Mom, we didn't know." "Didn't know what?" I asked. "That I owned a restaurant? That I'm a chef? That I've been doing this for 20 years? You never asked. You never wanted to know." My mother walked past me, into the restaurant. She looked around at the mismatched tables, the cracked bar, the faded photographs on the wall. There was a picture of my father from 1983, standing in front of the rusty nail when Gus had bought it. He was smiling. "You own this?" my mother asked. "I've owned it for 5 years. It's paid off. It's mine. And you never told us?" I laughed. It was a bitter, hollow sound. "When was I supposed to tell you?" "At Christmas, when you introduced me as a waitress? At Thanksgiving, when you told the whole table I was finding my footing? I've been trying to tell you for 20 years. You never wanted to hear it." Mackenzie was sobbing. "Elena, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't. You didn't put me on the seating chart," I said. "I checked. I called the restaurant. There was no mistake. You left me off on purpose." She turned pale. "Elena, Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I was so stupid that I wouldn't check? Or did you just not care?" "I was trying to protect you," she said. Mom said I shouldn't be there. Because I make you look bad. Because you're embarrassed of me." "No, that's not. It's fine. It's fine. I've known for years. I don't need you to pretend." I walked past them, into the kitchen. I started cooking. I didn't know what else to do. 3 days later, Mackenzie called me at 6 in the morning. "Elena, I need help." Her voice was shaking. She sounded like she'd been crying for hours. "What's wrong?" "It's Tyler. He's gone. He left." "Left where?" "I don't know. He took his truck. He took his clothes. He told me he was going to the store, and he never came back." "Elena, I'm 8 months pregnant. I'm 8 months pregnant and my husband is gone and I have no money and my credit cards are all maxed out and his truck was repossessed and the lease on the apartment is 3 months overdue and I sat down on my bed. I was still in my pajamas. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, ragged and broken. "Where are you?" I asked. "I'm at Mom's. She doesn't know what to do. Nobody knows what to do. Send me your address. I'm coming over." My mother's house was on Westover Road, a quiet street with manicured lawns and pristine houses. I'd grown up in this house. I'd left this house at 17 and never looked back. I parked in the driveway. I walked to the front door. I knocked. My mother opened it. She was in her bathrobe, no makeup, her face puffy from crying. She looked old. "I'm here for Mackenzie," I said. "She's in the living room." "Elena, I walked past her. Mackenzie was on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. She was huge with pregnancy, and her eyes were red and swollen. She looked at me like she was drowning. "He left," she said. "He just left." "I know." I sat down beside her. "What happened?" "I don't know." He was stressed. He was always stressed. The restaurant was losing money. The apartment was so expensive. I should have known. "Don't do that," I said. "Don't blame yourself. He made his choice. But what am I going to do? I have nothing. I have no money. I have no job. I'm going to have a baby and I have no. Move in with me." She stopped crying. She stared at me. "What?" "Move in with me. Above the restaurant. There's an empty room. It's not much. It's cramped and it's loud and the kitchen smells like grease, but it's free. Move in. Have the baby. Get back on your feet. I'll help you." "Elena, I can't." "Yes, you can. You're my sister. Nobody leaves my table hungry. That's what Dad used to say." She started crying again. So did I. A week later, I got the call from Michelin. "The inspector will be visiting on June 15th, the woman said. "It's a routine re-inspection. We'll let you know when we have the results." I hung up the phone and stared at the wall. A Michelin inspection. The first one had been a fluke. A happy accident. But this one was scheduled. This one was real. This one could make or break the rusty nail. I called Derek into my office. "We're getting a Michelin inspection," I said. "June 15th. His eyes went wide. "Chef, that's huge." "I know. We have to prepare. We have to perfect everything. The menu, the plating, the service. We're going to be ready," I said. But I wasn't sure. That same week, I was supposed to sign the papers for the building. After 5 years of payments, I was finally going to own the property free and clear. No more mortgage. No more debt. I had an appointment with my lawyer on June 16th. June 15th. June 16th. 2 days that could change everything. 2 weeks before the inspection, a food blogger from Food and Wine magazine showed up at the Rusty Nail. She was young and enthusiastic, and she asked to take pictures of the kitchen for a feature. I said yes. I didn't think about it. "Your sister told me about you," she said. "She said you're the best chef in Austin." "Mackenzie?" "Yeah. She gave me your card." I looked at my staff. They were all smiling. Derek nodded at me, and I knew. They'd arranged this. My staff, my sister, my people. They were trying to help. The feature came out 4 days later. It was titled The Rusty Nail, a star hiding in plain sight. The photo was of me, wearing my chef's coat, standing in my kitchen with my father's skillet in my hands. The article went viral. Within 24 hours, I had 100 reservation requests. And one call from a TV producer. "We want to film at your restaurant," she said. "A segment for a national food series. We'll be there on June 15th. Is that okay?" June 15th. The day of the Michelin inspection. "Sure," I said. "That's fine." The week before June 15th was chaos. The reservations were full. The press was calling. The inspector was coming. I was working 16-hour days, 7 days straight. I barely slept. I barely ate. I was exhausted. I was terrified. And I was hiding it from everyone. My mother came in on the 14th. I had no idea why she was there. She'd been making an effort, but she still didn't come to the restaurant. Elena, you need to sleep. I can't. You look terrible. I know. Is it because of the inspection tomorrow? I stared at her. How do you know about that? Your sister told me. Of course. Mackenzie had been keeping my books. She knew everything. I'm fine, I said. You're not. I don't have time for this, Mom. Elena. She grabbed my arm. She never touched me. I was so shocked that I stopped. I haven't been a good mother, she said. I know that. But please, just for once, let me help you. I don't need help. Yes, you do. I pulled my arm away. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been doing it alone. I don't need you to show up now and pretend to care. She left. I regretted it immediately. June 15th arrived with rain. It was the kind of storm that made the sky turn gray at noon. The gutters overflowed. The streets flooded. I knew, looking out the window, that the dinner service was going to be slow. The TV crew arrived at 4 o'clock. They set up their cameras in the dining room. They interviewed me in the kitchen. They asked me questions about the Michelin star and the future of the restaurant. Where did you learn to cook? They asked. I learned from my father. He was a cook. He died when I was 17. Did he see you succeed? No. He never saw any of it. The tears caught me by surprise. I turned away from the camera. I'm sorry. I need a minute. I walked into the office and closed the door. I sat down at my desk and put my head in my hands. I was crying. I hadn't cried in years. There was a knock at the back door. I ignored it. The knock came again, harder this time. I walked through the kitchen, past Derek and Maria and Pat. I opened the back door. Mackenzie was standing there, sopping wet, 8 months pregnant, her hair plastered to her face. Elena, she said. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. What are you doing here? I had to tell you. I had to tell you the truth. About what? She started crying. About the seating chart. At the shower. You asked me if I left you off on purpose, and I lied. I did leave you off. I did it on purpose. I felt like I'd been hit. Why? Because you make me feel small. What? Every time you walk into a room, everyone looks at you. Everyone wants to know you. You have this presence. This warmth. This confidence. You're so good at everything, and you don't even know it. She grabbed my hand. I wanted one day. One day where I was the center of attention. One day where nobody compared me to you. I was jealous, Elena. I was jealous of my own sister. Jealous of me? Mackenzie, I'm a waitress to you. I'm a nobody. I spent my whole life being invisible. No, you didn't. That's the problem. You were invisible to us, but you were visible to everyone else. You were always the one who mattered. Dad's favorite. The one who got out. The one who made something of herself. I stayed. I married a guy who was going nowhere. I got pregnant. I have nothing. That's not true. It is true. You have everything. You have this place. You have a star. You have people who love you. And I hate you for it. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, in the rain, staring at my sister. I understand if you hate me, she said. I would hate me. But I had to tell you the truth. You deserve to know. Come inside, I said. I don't want to. Come inside. You're about to have a baby. You can't be standing in the rain. I led her into the kitchen. The TV crew was still there, filming. I looked at them. I looked at Derek. I looked at the cameras and the lights and the pressure of everything. Turn it off, I said. Excuse me, the producer said. Turn it off. I'm done. I have a family emergency. But we have a contract. We're supposed to film the service. I said turn it off. She turned it off. I walked over to the stove and found the last of the hand pies. The ones I'd made for my sister's shower. I'd never thrown them out. I'd never been able to. I took my father's skillet down from the wall. I'd never used it for service. I'd kept it as a memento. But tonight, I needed it. I warmed the skillet. I put the hand pie in it. I let it crisp. And I handed it to my sister. Eat, I said. I can't. Eat. Nobody leaves my table hungry. She took a bite. She started crying again. Do you hate me? She asked. No, I said. I don't hate you. I never could. The next morning, I signed the papers for the building. It wasn't the same deal I'd been expecting. The bank had pulled the easy loan because they'd heard about the chaos at the Rusty Nail. The TV segment had been cancelled. The magazine feature had been rescheduled. But I didn't care. I signed the papers anyway. The building was mine. Derek came up to me after the service. The inspector was here, he said. He ate the tasting menu. He said nothing. He just left. He'll be back, I said. He always comes back. I didn't know if it was true. I didn't care. A month later, Mackenzie gave birth. A baby girl. Frances. We called her Frankie. Mackenzie moved into the empty room above the kitchen. She kept my books. She found a job as a waitress at a diner down the street. She hated it, but she was good at it, and she needed the money. My mother came to visit. She showed up at 6 a.m., wearing jeans, her hair in a ponytail. Teach me, she said. Teach you what? To make dough. I don't know how. I never let your father teach me. I thought it was beneath me. But I want to learn. I taught her. She was terrible at it. She couldn't get the consistency right, and she kept putting in too much flour, and she complained the whole time. But she stayed. The Michelin inspector came back a second time. He ate the tasting menu again. He left without a word. 3 months later, I got the letter. The Rusty Nail had kept its star. I hung the new certificate next to the old one, next to the dish pit, where only my staff could see it. It's been a year now. Frankie is walking. Mackenzie is still here, keeping my books, raising her daughter in the apartment above the kitchen. Derek is now my executive chef. I still cook, but I don't work 16-hour days anymore. My mother comes every Sunday to make dough. She's still terrible at it. But she's trying. The staff table at the Rusty Nail has a permanent extra chair. It's always there, waiting for someone to fill it. I don't know who's going to sit in it. Maybe Frankie, when she's older. Maybe some stranger who wanders in off the street. Maybe no one. But it's there. It's always there. And that's enough. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to Hushed Life Stories for more powerful and emotional stories.